Hello, welcome to the Isto James channel. I am Isto James. I want to thank you all for checking out this first video in our how-to series. Today we are going to be learning this beautiful, wonderful cherry blossom in moonlight. I'm going to show you how to do this in pretty much right around an hour. It's pretty quick painting, so please like, subscribe, share, let us know what you think, give us some comments down below, and if you want to just see this painting done really fast, we have a time-lapse version as well where you can watch the whole thing get created in a matter of minutes. The link is right below in the description, so please go check that out. If you're not into that and you actually want to learn and paint, this is the way, this is the channel, this is where you want to be. I'm going to show you how to do this all in about an hour. So let's get started. Okay, so when we get started with all of this, let me just go over some of the materials that we're going to be using. So first off, I go to a craft store, art store, really just whatever's close to you, whether it be a Hobby Lobby, Michael's, anything like that. Most of these stores will have this kind of stuff that you need. Now, since this is a beginner's painting and we're going to get through this pretty quickly, I also included tools that you can acquire pretty quickly and at an affordable price. Now, these brushes, again, you can usually buy them in packs. You can buy them individually. Really, it's only going to cost you a couple bucks to get anything. This is one of my favorite types of brushes to use. This is a 1-inch flat. We're going to use this to do our background and get everything blended and colored real well. Then I have basically the same replica version of it, just much smaller. We're going to use that to do some of our tree, some of the other details in there. And I don't always use it, but we can also use a small round detail brush. It's really up to you guys how you want to use it. I'm going to show you what we're doing, but there is no right or wrong with the tools that you use. Just find what works for you. But this painting is easy enough that we'll just do 3 brushes to get the whole thing started out. I got a couple glasses of water, and I have my palette. Now, I just use paper plates. It's easy cleanup. You can just throw it away when you're done. There's no right or wrong there, but if you got a paper plate, you can't go wrong. It does exactly what you need it to do. Hold some paint while you paint. Now I'm going to go over the colors that we have as well. The colors that we're going to use today, you can usually get in a basic collective pack as well that you also get from the art store. We have little different colors that we have. We got purple we're going to use. Any version of purple, violet, any of that will work just fine. We're going to use that for our darker edges. We have a phthalo blue. I hope I'm saying that right. It's actually one of my favorite colors. It's got a rich, nice royal tint to it that I really like. I'm going to show you how to use, but again, any blue will work as well. Then of course we have white, pink, magenta, which is just, you know, fancy dark pink. And we have black and white, which I'll use in almost every painting that I use. And of course, for our branch, we have brown. Any version of burnt umber, burnt sienna, anything like that will work as well. Again, this is pretty simple, and as I teach you how to do this, I want you to remember that you can do any version of this you want. You're free to do whatever you want. This is just a suggestion on how to do it, and I'm going to show you how easy this can be. Now, the first step is actually one of the most crucial steps as well, because what we want to do is we're going to blend some of these colors all together so we get a nice gradient nighttime sky is what we're looking for. And really to achieve that, let me back up just a little bit. We are using acrylic paint, not oil paint. The reason is it's a lot faster, it's easier to clean up. I don't like them as much when it comes to the end project, but this is the easiest way to do it, the cleanest way to do it. Love it. We're going to just roll with it. Acrylic paint, it's kind of just a plastic base. So as we get started, because it is acrylic paint, it will dry fairly quickly, but our medium, or what we use to mix the whole thing, is just water. That's what makes acrylic so great. So I also have a towel. It's good to place down something underneath, whether you have if you're working with a canvas or if just straight on a table, anything like that. It's good to put down like an old towel or an old sheet or something just to protect your surroundings and your areas, because this could get a little bit messy. But I guess that's half the fun, right? So let's just jump into this. We want to make this whole surface of our canvas wet, and that's because we want these colors to blend. So what I'm going to do as my very first step is actually just put a bunch of water on here and spread it around as best I can. You can use a spray bottle if you want. Sometimes I don't like using that because it'll actually create spots within the painting, So I like to brush it on anyway. With this 1-inch brush, I think of it as kind of a sweeping motion, like you're sweeping with a broom at home or dusting, something like that. You want to go back and forth to cover this stuff. You could do this, but it doesn't spread as evenly, and I don't like that as much. So, plus with what we're trying to do with this one is we're trying to get like a nice circular glow effect from this moon. So once I start, I'm going to start doing these big circles and half circles. So while I'm putting on the water, I might as well just get into the habit of doing that and making sure we have this. Sometimes these brush strokes or these watermarks will come up. So if I already start with the right motion, it won't make much of a difference, which is really nice. So as I'm putting this down, I just want to make sure that, I know this isn't most people's favorite word, but I'm going to use it anyway. You want to make sure it's moist. You don't want it to be soaking wet. You don't want it to be so dry that the paint won't spread as well. And you're going to really get a feel with your own style if you're painting along with me. You're going to figure out what works for you and what's best. But if there's too much water, the paint won't stick. We're going to get a lot of thin points. It won't be balanced. So as I do this, I can touch a little bit. I can already tell I used a little too much water this time around. So I'm going to just keep brushing what I have, using these half circles and just getting some of this water off, because at the end of the day, again, I want it to be just a little bit moist. If you have your handy towel with you next to you, you can even dab it off if you used too much. Problem with that is you might leave some lint or dust on there, so be careful with the towels that you use. But again, it's a beginner's painting. If you're not Michelangelo or Picasso or anything like that, then really it's going to be just fine. So, it looks like I have most of it covered. A nice little trick too to make sure if it's covered is you can pick up your painting and look at it at an angle, and the reflection from the light will definitely show you where your dry spots are, and it looks like I actually had a couple. So as we do that, we know we have a nice thin coat of water covering our whole surface, so we can just jump in and start applying our color. So I'm going to start out with this blue first. Now, this is our main color, and we are going to add purples and white to it to change the shade or the tint of it. But this is going to be our main thing, our main color. Now, I've taught this class a few times, and I've taught many a class in my life, and I've noticed that some of us have a bad habit of not using enough paint. In this part of the painting, it's crucial that you have a lot of paint. We want to cover the whole surface of this white canvas. We don't want to see the white peeking through. So sometimes I'll just take big globs and put it on there, blah, blah, just like that, to know that I have enough paint. Be careful not to put too much on there, otherwise this won't dry appropriately, or if you try to mix some other colors into it, the blue will just swallow it up, so we don't want that either. But I'm going to do like maybe roughly four, maybe 5 big scoops with my brush. The one thing you don't want to do that I've seen people do is they dip their brush in and they take just like a little tip, and as they're doing this, they're brushing it on like this and they run out of paint. And then later they ask, hey, why doesn't it look right? And that's usually it. So make sure you got plenty of paint for your background. I'm going to just test this. I'm just going to spread it on the same way as I was sharing with you earlier. Is I want to make sure this covers. Now with this water here, this is what really helps. This water is helping me spread this paint around. So you can see how nice and rich this blue is. I love it. And as I'm hitting some dry spots, you can see that this paint thins out really bad and it's not spreading really nice like it is over here. When this happens, you have one of two things happening. You either don't have enough paint or you don't have enough water. In this case, it looks like my canvas dried out just a little bit on the edges, so I'm going to dip just the end of my paintbrush in the water. I'm going to add just a little bit more water there just to kind of balance it out. Now we want to do this step relatively quickly because we don't want the paint to dry before we add these other colors into it. We want it to mix with this blue really nicely. So I'm going to add just a little bit more blue just to make sure we have enough that it mixes with these other colors we're about to apply. Now I am doing this circle edge. I'm going to put this moon right about here, top left corner area. So now that I have most of this paint spread, I'm going to do a lot of circles and things around that area. Excuse me, I'm going to do a lot of circles starting with where I want my moon to be. It's going to be here at the top left, like I said. So what I do is I put the brush down and I just kind of spin it in my fingers doing half circles. There we go. And then I'm going to just slowly spread it out, going bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now I will have these brush strokes, and that's okay. This is actually what makes this painting kind of cool, is you will see these different layers and these different strokes from the brush, and it creates a lot of interesting dynamic within the painting. But now I know where my moon is going to be. I know how much paint I have. So again, there's no right or wrong with what you're doing with this. It is art, and you might create your own style or have your own style that comes through. But what I mean by this whole point is that art is kind of like handwriting. If we're all painting the same exact painting, if you're following along with me, it's just like handwriting. If we're all writing the same sentence down on a piece of paper, we're all writing essentially the same thing, but the handwriting will look a lot different. So as you're painting this, if it doesn't look just like mine, that's okay. It just means your handwriting is just a little bit different. So you should embrace that definitely when you do this. Is don't try to emulate exactly what I'm doing, but use it as a reference and then create your own piece out of it as well. And that's where you're going to be the most happy with it. And then you won't judge it as badly either, because you won't be directly comparing it to somebody else's work. So I'm running in the same spot right here. It's drying out a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit of water. I'm going to go back for some more paint and just kind of fill in these last little areas where I have white. Now, I have my own OCD and things going on in my life that directly affects the way I do art, and I have to 100% do the edges of my painting. There is no right or wrong with doing the edges of your painting either. Most artists, if they don't do the edges, usually they plan on framing their work later. Or they're just not OCD, they don't care. But for me, I have to, for some reason, completely cover the edges of my paintings. For these simple paintings, I probably won't end up framing it. So if I hang it on the wall, I want it to look like it's a finished piece of work. So we're going to just do the edges real quick here. And it might be a good chance for you, if you are painting along with me, to get caught up, because I know I do this kind of fast sometimes. And this is where it can get messy too, but I love this part too because it cleans up these edges. It gets all this excess paint off. And then once my edges are fully painted or fully covered, so you can't see the white either, now my edges are covered. I'm going to go back and do one more quick turn around with this same technique. I'm going to start where I want my moon. I'm going to do my half circle just to kind of even out some of these brush strokes I got going on. And there we go. Now it is drying out a little faster. I do live in Las Vegas, and it is summertime currently while I'm filming this video, so it's a little warm, to say the least, and air conditioning can be very expensive. But it's kind of what inspired me to do this painting for you guys, because it does kind of look like a nice midnight summertime feel going on. So again, I'm just doing these broad half circles, trying to just make it all blend together. Now we're going to go in. I'm going to use some of this purple on all the edges. We're just going to mix that in to the sides here. I'm not going to go on the top left corner just because the moon is up there. I don't think it would get too dark when it's closer to the moon. So this purple just helps give it a little bit of depth. It kind of just enriches the painting just a little bit. And I'm not going to use too much. Like I said, I'll stay kind of towards the edges and the corners. Now I've used a dioxide purple, dioxazine. It's one of those dioxide purple. And I'm sorry, I apologize. It seems very unprofessional to not know that off the top of my head, but you'll see on the bottle that most of these purples work really well. This one just kind of matches up with this phthalo blue that I really like. So I'm using a stiffer brush. It is a little bit cheaper, but I prefer it. That's why I'm getting these nice thin brush strokes in between everything that I'm doing. You might have a softer brush, maybe a camel hair or some kind of synthetic brush where you're not going to get those lines, but it'll still mix and blend. So again, once you do this more, you're going to find what works for you and what doesn't. So as I do this just makes it look like it's a richer nighttime effect. And this brush really blends that purple and that blue together really nice, is what I really like about it. Again, going back to my big open brush strokes with these half circles. Fun little tip is I learned, and I learned late in my art teaching career, when we do these bigger strokes, it's better to actually pull with your shoulder and your elbow and not your wrist. You're going to have a lot more control. If you use your wrist, you're only going to have these short little strokes, and that's not going to work so well. So if you do these bigger strokes using your shoulder and your elbow, that's going to help you get some more consistency. I think it looks a lot better than using your wrist, because then you get these short jabby motions inside of your painting, and it doesn't work out so great. I think it looks good with these nice long big strokes that I'm using my elbow and my shoulder to pull with. So now that we have this purple mixed in here a little bit, we have some depth in our painting. The next step that I'm going to do is put some white. So I'm going to take some of this white that I laid out right here. I'm not going to clean my brush or anything because we are still just mixing the colors here, but I'm going to plop this white down right where I want my moon to be. So I'm going to do the same exact motions that I've been showing you so far. Only I use this huge clump of white, and this will now be the setting for our moon. Now we're going to come back and do the moon later, but what I do this for is to mix this white in with this phthalo blue. It makes just a gorgeous color. And it looks like it's drying out on me a little bit. So again, I'm going to just dip a little bit of water onto my paintbrush there. I'm going to start the process over again, just so I have it nice and even and balanced and everything's mixing really well in that sense. And again, I'm just kind of rolling this in my fingers, and I'm going back and forth with half circles. It is drying out a little bit all around on me, so I'm going to just continually add just a little bit of water as I go. The other cool trick, like I said, if you're running into this problem, is you can add just a little bit more paint. So as I go through with this white, and it's making this turn into a lighter blue, I can come back with some more of this phthalo blue and mix them together, which looks like what we're going to do this time around. So it's up to you how you want to do it, but you want these to bleed together. You want them to merge. You want a real good ombre, a gradient, whatever word you like to use for it. You don't want any hard edges. So I put a little bit more water, a little bit more phthalo blue, and I'm going to blend those edges just a little bit more with those two colors and a little bit more water, and then boom, look at that. It just blends right into it. And I could work this for days and try to make it perfect. At some point, you're going to have to just look at it and say, that looks about good. Again, once with these paints too, once it dries, it's not going to be as bright, it's not going to be as bold, so you're not going to notice these as much. And if we do our cherry blossom branch the right way, well then most of the focus should be on that anyway and not this background. But it is crucial to make sure you have a nice blend going on. It doesn't necessarily need to go white and then there's a line, and then blue and then there's a line, and then purple. You do want to mix this up just a little bit. So as I add a little bit of water, I can already see I might be adding a little too much water. So play with it, see what works best for you and your style. And I'm just going to keep going back and forth until I feel I got the right shapes. There we go. And I'm just going to keep working it out and out and out. Now, here's a fun part. I will go back. I'll add a little bit, just a little bit of white on the tip of my brush here. And I'm going to make some white streaks in the sky. Just kind of random. But I'm going to go back and kind of blend them a little bit as well. and it might almost look like a winter sky instead of a summer sky. It's up to you, but I don't think cherry blossoms will be. Maybe it's a cloudy day. It's really up to you what you want to do. But there we go. That's the effect I was going for. I just want kind of these streaks in the sky, just to add some character to our painting. So I added these little white streaks. I just want to blend this in a little bit more. And there's our background. Again, I'm a little OCD, so I might go back with some phthalo blue or maybe even some purple on the edges just to make sure everything looks like it's been covered. My goal initially is to make sure that there's none of this white canvas from the original canvas poking through. We do want our colors to take over because it is a painting, right? All right, so I blended that out pretty well to my liking. So again, what you should have at this stage, at the very least, even if you're not using the same colors as me, you want to make sure these colors blend and mix together so we're not stuck with solid walls of color, but we have a nice blend and a gradient happening. Cool, so I'm done with that part. So the next thing we got to do is, well, we got to wait for this part to dry. I'm going to have to take at least 10 minutes and let you guys catch up, whatever it is, but the beauty of camera is I can just snap and boom, we'll be on to the next part. So I'll see you in just a second. All right, now our background is dry, just like that. The next step, well, we're going to put in our cherry blossom branch. So with this, there's a couple of tricks I want to share with you. First one is, if you have some chalk at home, this is the easiest way to do it because now you can draw exactly what you're looking for. The next trick I'm going to show you is just how to use the brush and how to dilute your paint just a little bit so that you get the right consistency and you get good looking branches. With this, here we go. So if you have some chalk, what I do is I just draw this in. Now the second trick I'm going to show you applies with this one as well, but I'm going to draw anything that I want. Now the cool thing about using the chalk is if you have a line or maybe a shape that you didn't like, all you have to do is grab your towel or maybe a piece of paper towel, anything like that. You can just wipe it away. Just make sure that your background's dry before you do it. But like I said, you make a chalk mark, all you have to do is grab that paper towel or that towel. It wipes right away. You can start over, get the exact shape that you're looking for in the first place. So as we do this, I'm going to go ahead and just start drawing this in. Now the next trick we're going to do is when you're drawing a tree branch or painting a tree branch, it's kind of difficult sometimes to get the right shape. Now when I've taught these other classes, what I've also noticed is that once people do trees, they get a little frustrated because as the branches grow out, they actually get thicker and thicker and thicker, and it doesn't look right because in nature, as the branches grow out, they actually get thinner and thinner and thinner. So there's a trick to do here. So it's an easy mistake to make, but it's also an easy mistake to fix. So if we start with the chalk, what I do is I just like to draw in simple lines of what I want my tree branch to look like. For this painting, I'm going to do roughly about 3 branches. I don't want to go overkill with this. If you're right-handed, this trick is going to work out a lot better for you as well because you're going to be pulling this way. I'll get into that in just a sec. So I am left-handed. It's going to be a little bit different. But let's go ahead and just draw in our branches. So I'm going to say, let's start the bottom left, or the bottom right corner. I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to make it a little bit wavy. And I'll have it go all the way up, almost like it wants to touch the moon, but not quite. So there's first branch. Second branch, I'm going to have it coming off the same spot. Maybe this is the bigger main branch it's coming from. So I'll have it coming through. Maybe it'll go down a little bit just to fill up some of this bottom space here. Let's make it a little bit longer. There. Third branch, we're going to fill in some of this negative area over here as well. So I'm going to come up from there, and I'm just going to make another branch. Maybe short pops out like that. So now I have like what looks like a screwed up hand or a really bad fork. Really, it's just a tree branch. Now here's where the trick comes in. This is what's fun. Now again, if you're right-handed, this is going to work because as you pull from right to left, you're actually going to start. Most people, when they load up their brush, they're going to go in this. They're going to be thinking about it really carefully. How do they want to come in with it? And they're going to be really delicate. But then as the paint starts running out of the brush, they start freaking out a little bit and they push a little bit harder, a little bit harder. Next thing you know, it starts getting fatter and fatter and fatter just because it's your natural pull of how you're doing it. Well, if you're going from this side to this side and you're right-handed, that's good news for you because it's going to start out thin and then get thicker and thicker and thicker. That's really what you want. So my recommendation to you, if you are painting along with me, is start from the ends of your branches and go towards the main branch because naturally your arm is going to make it want to go thicker and thicker. If you have done this a lot, you can go either way, whatever's comfortable for you. Just make sure, really, to make this look like a realistic looking branch, is that as it gets further away from the main section, it gets skinnier. That's really just the main point there. The next little tip is when we're doing this paint, we want to mix it with a little bit of water. We want to thin it down because since we're doing these long strokes to make sure that we have these nice clean branches, we don't want to come in here and do small, jagged, little short strokes and fill it in. What we want to accomplish is one big long stroke. And to do that, we got to make sure that that paint comes off of this brush really easily. So what I mean by that is we're just going to mix a little bit of water into this. Now I'm going to back up just a little bit. I'm going to start with black for this. Then we're going to come over and do brown, and then we'll do a lighter shade of brown. So we'll do 3 different shades, but it'll give our branch some depth and texture. So black will solidify at least the dark ends of this, and it'll make it look a little bit more realistic. So as I do this, I'm going to take a little bit of this water. I'm going to mix it into my black paint here, maybe just on the edge so it doesn't start running all over my plate everywhere. But my goal with this is to think of it as maybe a 50-50 ratio. 50% water, 50% paint. As you do that, it becomes more like an ink. And then your brush that you're using, I'm using the smaller flat brush for this section as well. When we do that, it acts like an ink brush, and this should come off of our brush really smooth. We shouldn't see a lot of spots or jaggedness. And we shouldn't run out of paint while we do this either. So I'm going to go the opposite direction just because I'm left-handed. For you right-handers though, please, if you can, start from the tips of the branches. As you do this, if you loaded the brush right, which it should look like this, should be filled up all the way, and it shouldn't be clumpy. It should look almost like an ink pen. And as you do this, you can go right over the chalk. And same thing, I'm going to pull with my shoulder and my elbow, not my wrist. And I'm going to go around, and as we get to the end of this chalk marking, we want to make sure that that part's pretty thin. I made a second one. We'll just go with it. Maybe we'll throw another one in there just for luck. Boom. As you can see, once it gets closer to the right side or the main branch, that's when it's going to start getting thicker and thicker and thicker. So, you know what, just for fun, let's try it right-handed. I'm not right-handed, but let's show you for you right-handers. This is how you would do this part. So you start, let's start with this one. You start at the end here, and if you're really delicate, you're really careful, it should come off pretty simple. And as you go through it, it might get thicker and thicker and thicker. But I am left-handed, so I'm going to go back and do it this way, just to ease it up. Maybe this one has a nice little extra branch too. All right, so we got one more to go. We'll do the same thing, but you notice that I don't have to push very hard with this, and this black just comes right off the brush. It's not running out. It's still nice and consistency. And there we go. We have our branch. Now what we want to do is maybe fill in the empty areas, or make it, maybe, I can see right now, it's not as thick as I would like it. So I'm going to go back and add some thickness to it. Bloop, bloop, bloop. So let's make the branch a little bit thicker towards the bottom. Just remember that once you get towards the end there, you do want it to thin out. You don't want it to be thick at the end. All right, come back through. I am loading my brush up every time I do a line though, just to make sure I don't run out. Don't want to run out. Let's make it thicker here. And this is a good chance too, if you've made a line maybe you don't like very much, you can cover it up. Maybe you made a mistake or you have a drip, whatever it may be. This is a good part of the painting where you could cover that up as well. I think I still want it to go just a little bit more. Biggest lesson to take away here is try to do it in one smooth stroke so you don't get these jagged edges. Ta-da! Alright. Now, since it is acrylic, it should dry relatively fast, but we're going to go through and add our brown once we're happy and content with the shape that we have here. So I want to go just a little bit more, because I want to see this brown come through, and if we don't make it thick enough, we won't see any brown or the textures that we're trying to create. There we go, that looks pretty good. And then of course I got to do my sides, so I just look off to the side for a second and fill that in as if it was already going. Alright, so we want that to dry a little bit, which since it's thin, it should dry pretty fast. So the next step is, well, we don't want just a black branch, we want some brown in there. So let's add some brown. So I'm cleaning off my brush a little bit. This black will take over. Same principle here. I'm going to mix some water into this brown. I'm not going to make it 50-50 though. Think of it more as 20-80, because we do want this brown paint to show up. So play with it. Find a texture that works for you. It depends on how long your paint's been sitting out, how old it is. Everybody's texture might be a little bit different. Looks like I got some older brown paint, but that's okay, because as we add this water, it'll smooth it out. Now, when I add the brown though, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm not going to do smooth lines, because the smooth lines already show me exactly where I'm supposed to be. Also, those chalk lines are still visible. Once this painting's done and completely dry, we'll wipe it again. Chalk will come right off. You won't even see it. So my brown's a little clumpy. That's a shame, but that's okay. We can, again, fix it. I'm just going to have to add a little more water than I wanted to originally. And just kind of mix it here on the palette, on the plate. There we go. So we have something kind of similar here. We have just a nice brown inkish type look, and I'm going to do my best to leave the bottom of the branch. If we think about how light works in the world, light would be shining on this branch. Maybe it wouldn't hit the back side of it, maybe it wouldn't hit the bottom, but I feel like in this painting we would definitely see it hit the top of it. So what I want to do is create this brown, and I'm going to come through and just pull it down all across the top here, and it is mixing a little bit with this black because it's not fully dry, but that's okay. Another nice little trick with this is we can take this brown and we'll just mix it with a tiny bit of white over here. What this does is kind of create a primer effect, so it'll cover up that black pretty quick with just this little bit of white that we have in here. So we have a little bit lighter brown. I don't want to use too much. We don't want to go to a light brown. That'll be our final touch. For now, we just want this main brown to come in. So we do this again, and you'll see that this brown pops a little bit better. And I'm doing little brushing strokes. I'm doing these little brushing strokes to create texture, to create form, so that when we see this tree, we're not thinking that it's just a black line. We got a little bit of texture in there in our guy here. So now I'm just using a lot of brown because the black didn't dry all the way. So we might have to give it just a few seconds, give it some time to dry. I'm gonna give you guys obviously some time. If you just pause the video, you get as much time as you would like. So go ahead and go for that. See if you can let that brown or the black dry a little bit more. Alright, so we're gonna go back in with this brown still. I just want to make sure I get this top edge of our tree. If you go in with a line like this, just make sure you go back and create some of that beautiful texture I was talking about. You'll impress all your friends with all your skills if you can show them you know how to paint just a little bit of texture. Promise. So now we're getting a little bit of form and function to this bad boy here. Maybe I'll add a little bit more white. And it's fun, you can think about how your tree might fit in real life. Maybe this branch is coming right off of the top of it. Maybe it's coming from behind it. It's up to you. I'll make this one coming from behind it. So if I do that, I just want to make sure my highlighted pieces go in front of it. So now it creates that illusion that that branch is growing out of the back side of it. So I just mix some white in, a little bit more and more and more. And that's how I'm getting these different shades and colors. But I think that's exactly how we make this look three-dimensional. So I'm going to just do some white now, mix it in with the brown. As I do this, I got this really light color. And this is just going to be the highlight. So I'm going to go through and do kind of the tips of the branch, some of the top edges where the light might be actually hitting it. Mixing in a little bit more water since I'm adding more paint because I do want it to have that thin consistency I've been telling you about. So now I have a really, really light brown by mixing in that white. And I go back through this again, same kind of technique that I was showing you. But now we have this nice, brilliant, like the moon's actually hitting the branch. Maybe it's hitting the bottom side of this one. More water. Definitely hitting the top side of this one. Maybe hitting the top of this side. And my paint's already getting thick. Now again, I'm going to go back and do this raking motion just to give it some more texture. Up to you if you want to do it or not though. If you're really happy with your lines, please keep your lines. There is no right or wrong when doing your own painting. Add just a few highlights at the base here. Again, as long as we're using 3 or more colors, we're going to get this depth, this color, this realistic look about it by using multiple tones and colors. I should say tones, not just colors, because I mean, it's just different shades of brown and black. But doing so should give you this nice rounded look. All right, I think we spent enough time on this. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the cherry blossoms. That's the next spot. So again, we're going to let this part dry because we're going to go back to our chalk. So I'll give you a second to pause the video, let it dry, and I'll see you all in just a moment. So now that our branch is dry, we can start adding our cherry blossoms. Now what's cool about cherry blossoms is we're going to get lots of different forms, functions. So if you mess up, it might actually look natural. Maybe there's a full-blown bloomed blossom. Maybe there's still some buds. Maybe there's some partially ones. I'm going to do a little bit of all of them just to put some variety in here. So I think I'll do just a couple full-blown ones, and then we'll go from there. So what I'm going to do here is find where I want to do my full-blown ones. I made these tiny little branches on purpose so that we could get some of these stems and some of these buds blossoming. And I think I want to put a big full one right here just because that seems like the center, almost like the centerpiece or the middle of the painting. So with my chalk, I'm going to draw it in. Now, if you don't have chalk, you can still do this. If you use your small flat brush, you can come in here and do the half circle, the twirling technique to get them in there. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. I'm going to do both techniques. So I think I'm going to put one here, and I'll show you guys how to do that without the chalk. I know I just put chalk there, but I'm going to put some, you'll see. And I'm going to draw one here. So as I draw these full blossoms, I'm going to think of it as kind of a daisy or a lily. I could be saying the wrong flowers here, but what I'm thinking of is 5 petals. So when I do these 5 petals, I'm going to try to make them equal. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but maybe one cherry blossom fits in kind of like that. We might have a few, maybe we have a smaller one just hanging off of this, and it's only got maybe 1 or 2 buds coming out. Now to get that effect, I'm just doing kind of like a kidney shape or like a bean shape, and I'm just overlapping everything I do. I'm essentially taking this shape, this triangular flower shape, and I'm just overlapping it. If you imagine you had a bunch of cardboard or construction paper pieces of this and you moved them around, that's kind of what's going on in my mind with this shape. So again, when you use chalk, you can just wipe that away. We're good to go. So I'm going to add a few more shapes in here. I didn't like this one. Maybe we have it overlap a little bit that way. That probably looks a little bit better. There we go. Let's do one. Maybe it only bloomed to 4. So maybe it's coming out with that shape again. But I'm thinking of the angle now flips. Instead of looking right at us, maybe it flips like that and is kind of growing away from us. So we do it kind of like that. That's just the method and the reasoning in my head, but really it's up to you however you want this to fold out. It's not going to look right or wrong. If you use just some of these techniques and the colors, people are going to know exactly what you were going for. Let's see, towards the bottom here, maybe we have another one that's hanging. So we have it like this, and maybe it's not fully bloomed yet. So again, I do that kidney bean shape. Maybe it looks like almost like a tulip hanging upside down. Sure, why not? It's painting, it's art. It's supposed to be fun, right? Let's go with it. Let's do a couple buds that haven't bloomed. Maybe there's one right here at the bottom, and it's just the bud. It hasn't bloomed yet. So think of it as like a pistachio kind of shape. Let's do a couple more of those. Let's do another pistachio shape. And we might be close to filling that up because we're going to have one here. I'm just going to show you without that. Maybe we have one more full one growing out towards us, so we can't see the branch, but we can see the kind of shape unfolding towards us. There we go. Looks good. Let's get into it. Now let's open up the palette here again. With this, I'm going to lay down purple first as a darker color. I always like to do most of my shapes with at least 3 colors or more, or 3 tints of different shades to really give it that depth or color. So I'm going to use my flat brush here, my little one, not the big one. And when I do this, I'm going to, actually let me show you how to do this full blossom. If you don't have the chalk and you can't vision this out, I'm adding a little bit of water to this. It has dried out a little bit because of the time that we've spent, but that's okay. Adding water to acrylics, it's amazing. It's a great medium. It's pretty much the only medium. That's a lie. Let me back up. So take 2. When I add water to this, it's a great medium for this project because it thins out the paint, it keeps it fresh, it helps us spread the paint around better on the actual surface of the canvas. So I got this purple here. So just like how I drew the petals, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe give it its stem, and then I'm going to use this and push it around just like I did with the beginning of our painting. This is what my brush looks like. I got some paint on it, not clumpy, and it's not a huge stack, but it's pretty healthy there. And I'm gonna just make the motion of those petals that I was showing you. So there's one petal. And I'm just kind of twirling it in my fingers just a little bit. But it's creating these natural brush strokes that make it look like it's overlapping itself. Boom. And there's the base of our cherry blossom. I'm going to do the same with these, just so we can see the base. Now this will be a little easier because you have some lines you can stay in. And over here by the moon, where our moon's going to be, you can see this color is really nice and rich. So there's the base of another one. Here's a base. This is where you don't have to be scared to do your brush strokes, because it might create some of those natural petal or flower looking shapes that we're looking for. And this is the beauty of painting of nature, is there is no right or wrong. As long as you get the general shape right, it'll look fantastic. And even if you don't get the general shape right, maybe that's part of your style, it might still look really fantastic. So now we got this darker color set in. We know where our cherry blossoms are going to be. In that same form, we're going to do this again. I always like using 2 cups of water. One might be cleaner than the other, or one might be easier to access faster. It's a fun fact, I guess. So now I'm going to go to my magenta, my dark pink. I got quite a bit of it here considering the project size, but that's okay. So I'm going to mix a little bit of water into it again just to thin out the paint, make it workable. It is mixing a little bit with this purple, which actually is kind of nice. So this is our second shade we're going, and then we're going to go with the light pink, maybe even some white afterwards. So now that we got this purple going on, or this pink magenta, I mean, we go back again, and we just highlight some of these edges, giving it some more functionality. It's blending with this purple now, which is cool. I'm starting from the middle. Oh, this is going to need a lot of water. It's some thick paint. If you're using heavy bodied, like level 3 acrylic paints, you might need a lot of water because some of this is pretty heavy bodied, but you just want it mixed down to a consistency that you can work with it. Again, almost like it is like an ink on your brush for this stage. We don't want it quite that thin like what we did with the branch, but pretty close. Let's call it a 30-70 split. So with that, we're adding some pink to this, but I'm starting from the middle and I'm going out and I'm finishing the last edge of the petal. Starting to get some real shape and form to these petals. And the purple just helps us with a little bit of depth. And it blends really nice with the other colors in the painting. So start from the middle and kind of turn the edge, right? Start in the middle and just turn out the edge. Start in the middle, turn out the edge. Doesn't really matter which way you go. Some big, fat, pink cherry blossoms. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Start in the middle, turn out the edge. Start in the middle, turn the edge. Start in the middle, turn the edge. Now this one looks kind of funny, so I'm just going to redo some of this just so it looks like the petals are reaching outwards. The brush strokes, I mean. We might have to make that up with some white detail. Again, there's no right or wrong here. You can have fun with it. All right, start in the middle, turn the edge. Start in the middle, turn out the edge. Middle, edge, middle, edge. Now, if there was no tree branch here and I started doing this, you probably would all think it was clouds or something silly like that, but that's why you don't need to stress so much about what this form looks like. I'm going to show you how to do some details with some black and white once we're finished here. So I'm going to do the same thing. Now I'm just going to move on. I'm going to clean this brush a little bit though, because there is quite a bit of magenta on there. So I'm going to clean it in my water, take my towel, wipe off my brush so I have a clean brush. And I'm going to use some pink now. I'm not going to mix any water into this because I don't want it to blend so much. I want this to really stand out. Now what I'm going to do is create those cool, almost Hawaiian lotus kind of flower effects. This is where the main color from our cherry blossom is going to show up. So I'm going to do like little lines for each petal that comes out. And I do want to capture some of these nice dark purples that I've made. All right, maybe I'll add a little bit of water, but not much, because we want this to keep its form. Maybe this brush comes out. There we go. Same thing, start in the middle, kind of turn out the edge, make some lines. And now we have what looks like a cherry blossom. We'll get some minor details going on in just a minute. I feel like the darkness, or the purple, the darker areas would be closer to the center of the flower because the light's not hitting it as much. Maybe the edges get a lot more light color, considering. And have fun with it. If you want to twirl your brush around in any way you want, maybe you come up with something that looks really amazing on accident, and that's okay. Boom. All right. Now I'm just going to say, let's go to our moon. Let this part dry just a little bit. We're going to come back and add our final details to the flower. But while we're waiting for that to dry, let's rinse off your brush as best you can, or grab a clean new one if you want. But you want a clean brush for this next part because we're doing our moon. So we don't want any pink on our moon. Unless you purposely want to do it, then go nuts. Again, there's no right or wrong, but I want my moon to just be white. So I made myself one extra dot of white here that's untainted by other colors. I'm gonna mix some water into it, just like we've been doing. And I'm gonna just make a solid circle here in the middle to represent our moon. So same thing, I'm going to do a half circle, and basically just spin the brush around until it's the size and consistency that I really like. Now, a fun little thing that I did start doing on more of these recent paintings was adding just like these little swirls around the moon. It made a cool little texture. And let me share with you what I mean. Is if I take this brush, load it up with white paint again, and I can just, almost like it's a saw blade or something, like it has this whooshing motion about it. But I want the whooshing motion to be consistent. And kind of just do lines around the outside of it. Oh no, and it all went away. And I'll do one more final swipe on the inside so we have really nice solid white in the middle. There's that whooshing I was looking for. So I'm just pressing really hard with some of this white coming off the edge of the brush as I spin it around. And then as that dries, I'll probably do one more spin around right in the center just so we can see. I don't know, that looks pretty good. No right or wrong here. Maybe we'll just stick with that. That looks pretty good. It's always a surprise how I get this moon to come out. And that's kind of fun about it. Alright. So now that we have a little bit of white on our brush, I'm going to go do some details and edges around the cherry blossom. So when I do that, I'm going to take like the edges where I feel the moon would really hit these flowers. Maybe add a couple lines into it as well. But it should mix with this pink that we just laid down, creating a really bright color. Really helping with some of this definition. I'm just doing what I feel would be the edges of the petals. Going in with white. Just so it looks like the sun's the moon is really hitting them really good. And really bringing out some of their form. And it's mixing naturally with this pink. I'm not going to go too much into the center of the flower because again I feel like that's where the light wouldn't be hitting and that's where it's its darkest. But maybe it caught just like an edge there. And make a solid edge there. I'm just blending in the colors that already existed there that haven't quite dried. Okay. So final step. I take that detail brush we were talking about at the beginning, put some water on it just to wet the bristle there. I go back in for some of this black, and I can kind of finely tune what I want to see here. So when we do the black, maybe I'm just doing the outline here. Definitely not maybe, but maybe it has like the pollination part coming out, like the little cloves. I don't know what to call those. But just the center of the flower, almost like a little star or firework in between there. So we can see just some of the edges where it might be darker on these. On these. So I'm not going to do all of the edges because that would defeat the purpose of what we just did with the white. But just to get some form to what we're looking at, I'm going to do it where I think the moonlight might not be hitting an edge. If you really want kind of a cartoony look, though, you can do this as well and do all the edges, and you'll get like a really bold kind of cartoon look about it, which could be fun for some of you as well. Really just depends on your style. But I'm just filling this in as if it was kind of realistic, and I'm just separating where in my head where one petal or leaf starts and the another one ends. Just giving it that last bit of detail. So we see some real definition and form that might have been lacking earlier. And you can be kind of lazy with this too. Just sometimes the imagination can run wild and you see something that maybe wasn't there before. But this is a quick beginner painting, and this should help you at least, hopefully, be on the way to doing a whole lot more, I hope. And there we go. Let's add maybe just a little bit more pink. I'm not happy with the pink. So I'm going to use this detail brush again. I'm going to finalize some of this pink. I really want this pink to stand out. I don't feel like it pops quite enough to my taste. So we're just going the extra mile here with the detail brush. And I'm probably going to do one more layer of white too. Since I mixed it in with the black there on accident, that might work in my favor. But I'm going to clean off the brush just to make sure I don't get any more elsewhere where I don't want it. There we go. Now I feel like that's popping. So I'm just going to keep adding this natural pink. Make sure these look like they're really lit up in this night sky, probably in Japan. There we go. Now we look like we have some really nice pink petals. So you might have to do this a couple times back and forth, but do it as much as necessary so that it's something you're happy with or content with. Just make sure you don't overwork it to the point where the paint won't stick or you lose its form altogether. Just have fun with it is my only advice. Just have fun with it. Let's put a little bit of white in there. Really make those edges shine again. So again, I'm just doing some of these bright edges where I feel the moon would really be hitting them to give it that final detail flare. Really, it's just having multiple tones in here, not just one single color. If we made these just flat pink, it would probably look okay, but I feel like you get so much more out of it when you have these extra tones and different tints and values. And I'm dangerously close to overworking it, so I think we're about done here. Let me just do this last couple of edges. And if you enjoyed this painting, blah, blah, blah. And if you enjoyed this painting, please don't forget to like, subscribe, leave some comments, let me know how I did. If you have something you'd really like to see me paint in the future, or any other ideas of things that you'd like to see, if I can do it, I would love to help. Let me know. Please subscribe, be interactive with me. And that's basically it. Let me finish this last bit of moon, and then I'll sign off and say goodbye to you guys. But thank you again so much for taking the time to do art with me here today, or at least watch it. And I hope you go on and create some art of your own, and hopefully we'll talk soon. And as I'm wrapping this up, it looks like we're done. So thank you for checking out this first how-to video. Let me know how I did. Appreciate you guys so much. Have a great one. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.